From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
The Post has been a proud supporter of the National Book Festival for all of its 9 years of existence, and I'm thrilled to be here today to introduce to you, among other people, S.J. Rozan. S.J. Rozan has won almost every award you can possibly think of for her mystery novels and short stories, among them the Edgar, the Macavity, the Shamus, the Nero. I could go on and on and on. Her latest Lydia Chin, Bill Smith mystery is called The Shanghai Moon, and it's fabulous. As soon as I read it this summer, I put it on my NPR list of best mysteries of the summer. It's a mystery that takes place both in Shanghai during World War II and in modern-day Chinatown. And best of all, to those of us who grew up on Nancy Drew, it involves a missing stolen gem. So if you have not read it, you're really in for a treat. It's a wonderful mystery. It's my pleasure to introduce to you S.J. Rozan.
Hi, folks. I want to thank the Library of Congress and all the organizers. This is one of the best organized events I have ever done. And really, you guys are terrific. And one of my favorite parts of the organization of this event is that I have become the ham in the James Patterson Lee Child sandwich. So I thank you for sticking to your seats like glue. We were asked not to do readings, which is what I usually do, but to talk to you, which I think is great. And what I want to talk about is genre writing. My first thought was I would just tell bad stories about James Patterson and Lee Child, but they're both nice guys, and I don't have that many bad stories. I have a couple, but not that many. So I'm going to talk about genre writing, because here you all are in the mystery and thriller tent. You obviously like mysteries and thrillers, but because you do, you have probably at least once in your life experienced that pained smile that I got one time right after I started writing, and I was at a cocktail party, not a literary event, but a cocktail party, and somebody asked what I did, and I said I was a writer, and she said, "Oh, that's wonderful. What do you write?" And I said, "Well, I write mysteries." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't read mysteries. I only read good books." For true, she really said that. And I thought, whoa, but that's what I try to write, I don't believe that writing in a genre frees a writer or a book from the obligation, of trying to write well. Writing well involves creating compelling characters, making a setting you can see, you can hear, you can smell, making a plot that moves and makes sense, goes someplace, using meaning, something bigger than the plot in the book, and doing this all in prose that resonates and sings. The genres, which I will kind of get to what they are and what they're for, but the genres add requirements to all that. You have to do all that and in my view, a genre novelist is trying to do, the genre novelist is to the literary writer, or it's trying to be to the literary writer, as Ginger Rogers was to Fred Astaire. Because Ginger Rogers, as is famously said, and not by me, did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in high heels. For the genres, we have to do that too. We have to do everything literary writers do, and give you what you expect from the genre you love. And at this point, half of you are sitting there thinking, now, come on, you're telling me that all those paperback originals where the cat solves the crime are War and Peace? That they're, well, of course they're not. There is a lot of crap published in the genres, and I admit it right here and now, but I also am going to tell you why. Because this is S.J. Rozan Explains It All for you, and I'm gonna get to it all. But the first question I want to cover is why I write this stuff. And I say it that way because there's another story, which is, again, when I started, one of my mother's friends bought my first book, which was very loyal of her, and she read it, which was even more loyal. She was not a genre reader. And she said to me afterwards, you know, I really liked it. And you can really write. So why do you write that stuff? And the implication is obvious, is that this stuff is only for people who don't have the chops to write the real stuff. And the implication about readers is it's only for readers who don't have the chops to appreciate the real stuff. Now, you all know that you read everything, and you read the other stuff, and you like that too. And it's the snobbery that really interested me. And I thought, okay, it's actually a reasonable question, if unfortunately phrased. But why do I write this stuff? Because in one sense, she was right. I could be writing anything. Not necessarily that I have the talent or the ability or whatever, but as a matter of choice, I could have chosen to write something else. I chose to write crime. Why? What was it I was doing? And I thought, okay, the broader question is why do the genres, the writing genres, exist at all? Now, part of the answer to that is it's a marketing issue. Barnes & Noble knows where to put them on the shelf, and you know where to go to find them. But that's not the whole thing. So I started really thinking about what the genres do. And Walter Mosley touched on this a little bit, if you were here for his talk, where he said that each kind of book tells a different kind of story. And the overall story that books tell that the genres tell is in my mind, I've called it the story. I know you're familiar with this term, it means really overarching. And the different genres have different stories embedded in them. The story in romance is the possibility of making a real connection between two people. The story of science fiction is what is our place in the universe. The story of the Western is how to be an adult, a man, a woman, in the face of a hostile world. What does that mean? The story of horror is what do you do when the entire world turns upside down and it's all threatening? Well, the story of crime has to do with good and evil, but even more with chaos and order. And not even so much in the plot, the bad guys against the good guys. This is good and evil. And not just chaos and order in the sense that the world is orderly, chaos comes in the form of the murder in the vicarage, and order has to be restored. You find out who did it, you cast them out, and order is restored. But it's not just that, it's more than that. The most important way that the crime novel displays and tells a reader this story is in the bargain made in the genre between the reader and the writer. The bargain is that in these books, in a mystery, in a crime novel, everything happens for a reason. And through the book, you discover what these reasons are. That's the difference between chaos and order. And it doesn't have to, the bad guy doesn't have to be brought to justice. There may be no justice at the end of the book, but you know why things happened. Because in real life, you don't get that. In real life, you walk across the street here and you get hit by a bus, and somebody says, why? Why him? Well, there is no why. Why is because he walked out in the street and the bus was coming. That's not what you mean when you say why. And you don't get that answer. You never get that answer in real life. Things happen to us over and over, and there is no why. There is no reason. But in books, in crime novels, there's always a reason. There's always a reason, and you discover it at the end, and that's what's so satisfying. It's not justice. It's not the restoration of order in the world that you're reading about. It's the restoration of order in your life because there is a reason for what's going on in the books. That's the story of crime. That's why people read this stuff, and that's what attracted me to write it. Before I was a writer, I was an architect, and the kind of architect I was not a designer. I was a builder, I was a construction person. We did a lot of restoration, and I wanted to know what was going on, what was happening behind the walls, what was happening in the building, why things were the way they were. So I write out of that same impulse of to know what was going on. In the subgenre I write, and a lot of my books, I have now 11 books, 9 of them, including Shanghai Moon, are private eye novels. And in the private eye subgenre, you have another thing going on, which is you have essentially a descendant of the classical hero, the hero that goes back to antiquity. And this is a hero whose job it is in the story to go out into the world and rescue someone from the underworld and bring them back to the daily world. And in those days, the underworld was, where the lower gods dwelt, or was Hades, or whatever you want to call it, as you go through the, starting from antiquity and up through the Middle Ages, all the knights errant, all these guys. It's a little different now, but we use the same term. The underworld is now the world where the criminals live. The underworld is the crime world, and the job of the detective is to go into that world and bring someone out. This is what the private eye does. The private eye rescues people who are not rescuable by the forces of law and order from the underworld. Bill Smith, who is my first character, Bill Smith is your classic archetypal white male private eye. And he comes from a long line of these guys whose job it is to be the guy who could inherit the world because of who he is. He's a white male private eye in America. As a middle-class, educated, healthy, straight white male, he could be on top of the world, but he sees the world as much too corrupt for that. The price is too high. So he steps back, and his heroism is his heroism comes from the fact that he does step back from that, and he rejects the power he could have had, and he uses whatever he has to save people from the corrupting influence of the power that exists in the world. That's that private eye archetype. My other private eye, Lydia Chin, is a young Chinese-American woman living in Chinatown in New York with her mother. And her heroism is completely different because her heroism consists in being the person she wants to be, the person she knows she is, in the face of a world that tells her, you're young, you're small, you're a woman, you're a single Chinese woman, this is not the thing you should be doing. There's another life you need to be living. And she says no. She's not 100% sure of herself, but she's sure of who she is. And she says, no, this is the life I should be living, I think. And then she goes ahead and lives it. So those are the characters I wanted to deal with, those two archetypes. And those are the stories I wanted to tell. And that's why I write this stuff. And that's why you discerning readers read this stuff, because we're looking for that story to be told, that story of good and evil, chaos and order, that story that says there are reasons for things that happen to us. So, okay, I thought, that's why I write this stuff, that's why people read it, and that's fine. But where does all that snobbery come from that we started with, all those people who say they only read real literature? What is that about? That's a little different, but I went into that too, because all these things are interesting. When people put you down, there's an interesting thing behind it. So I wanted to know what that was, and I started thinking about it, and I think the snobbery comes from two places. One is, as I said, there is a lot of crap published in the genres. There really is. And it seems to me, because I'm going to get to why that is in a minute, but if you ask me, and somebody did because that's why I'm up here, if you ask me, the crap is what the snobs point to justify their snobbery. It's not really why they look down on the genres. But they can look down on the genres and say, but look at all that crap. The crap is not the problem. The popularity of the genres is the problem. This is... Oh, I'm looking for where I was going to put that story, and I didn't say where I was, so I'm going to put it right now. Theodore Sturgeon was once asked why he writes science fiction. And he said, you know, and the questioner said, why do you write science fiction? 90% of science fiction is crap. And Theodore Sturgeon said, yeah, well, 90% of anything is crap. That's true, but it's also not the point, because we're trying to deal with the part that isn't crap. This is a society, our American society, which has many, many virtues. One of its virtues is that it is, in theory at least, a classless society. We're a meritocracy. If you're good, you can make it. This is the theory of this society. And we all know it has a lot of flaws, but this is our philosophical basis. The problem with that is that you don't know what your role is. You walk into a room and you don't know who you are in relation to everybody else. And so you have to establish yourself somehow in relation to everybody else. Now, one way to be better than everybody else, one way to be at the top of a meritocracy, is to think of it as a pyramid, and there are fewer and fewer and fewer people as you go up and up and up. And up at the top, there are those few rarefied, educated, highly sensitive individuals who can appreciate great art. Now, if you think of it that way, then you have to see the other side, which is that if something is appreciated by huge numbers of people, it by definition can't be great art. Because those of us who are rarefied and educated and all that, we have to somehow stand apart. So we have to be able to identify the art that most people are just not sensitive enough to get. And I think a lot of the snobbery comes from that. It comes from academics and critics looking for a way to define themselves as excellent people, and they define themselves against all the rest of us who are a kind of, you know, are the masses. And if you look at all the genres all have this problem because the genres, in fact, are enormously popular. Mystery, thriller, science fiction, all of this stuff is vastly popular, and it gives a lot of the critics a pain. And what you'll see is when there's a really, really, really good book written as a genre book, they will come along and say, well, of course, that novel transcends the genre. And, you know, what they're doing is they're taking the cream off the top and then complaining that the milk is skimmed. You know, you can't do it. If it's written as a genre book, you have to mix it in. Now, that explains the snob reaction. It still doesn't explain why there's so much crap in the genres. And I will tell you that, and then I'll take questions because I already got the little sign. And this is my final theory of the day, which is that the stories that people demand, the stories of chaos and order, the stories of what it means to be human, the stories of the possibility of making a connection, the hunger for these stories is so strong that the readers who want to hear the story again and again will put up with lousier stories to get that overarching story. They'll put up with lousier books. They don't want lousier books, but they'll buy them because they're there, and publishers will publish them because publishers only care about what you'll buy, not, you know, what's really great. Literary fiction doesn't have stories. Every book stands on its own. And so it has to have something else to attract a reader, or it won't attract a reader. And so the bad ones, every bit as many bad literary novels get written by undergraduates in coffee houses as bad genre novels, but they don't get published. Because who would buy them? You read a literary novel for that list of literary merits that I ran through before. It has no Earth story, so if the literary merits aren't there, you're not going to read it. Why would you? That's why there's so much crap in the genres, because people want these stories so much they will put up with worse books. But don't ever let anybody tell you that the books are written to be bad because the readers of the genres don't know the difference. Because you all do know the difference. We know the difference. You know, we can tell good books from bad books. So that is my my screed. That is my my philosophy here that I've. And now I think I'm supposed to take questions, right? If there are questions, I can just go on and on. But if there are questions, thank you. I guess there's microphones here. I also want to say I love having a sign language interpreter because I talk with my hands all the time, but my hands are completely inarticulate. My hands just babble, and I love watching someone whose hands are actually articulate. So thank you very much over there. Okay, a question here.
First of all, thank you. I've read all of your books, and
Thank you.
I think they're just astonishingly fine.
Thank you.
And I wondered, whom do you read?
Oh, whom do I read? Oh, that's a dangerous question because, you know, some of them are here and some of them I'm going to forget. But I'll tell you what I've been reading lately, and I'll tell you a couple of people whom you may not know. You know, I try to read my compatriots in the genre, but I've lately discovered a young Chinese-American crime writer named Ed Lin, L-I-N. He has a book coming out called Snakes Don't Run, which is actually his third novel, but his first two were published by very small presses. Naomi Hirahara, who is a Japanese-American writer, and has a book just coming out that, of course, I can't remember the name of, but I will someday. Blood Hina. Hina is a Japanese doll. I read, of course, Walter Mosley, and what I love about Walter Mosley is that he goes from genre to genre, and it doesn't bother him. I have been reading lately nonfiction. I just read a great book called The World Without Us, which is the book on which the History Channel show Life After People is based. This is a great book. But I try to read new people. I try to get new sources. And of course, you know, I've read at least the new Lisa C., Shanghai Girls, which it's pretty much the same time as my Shanghai Moon, but it brings the people from Shanghai to New York, or to America. So Lisa C., I think, is terrific.
Thank
you. So that's a, you know, kind of babbled answer, but it's, yeah.
I love Lydia's mother.
Thank you. Lydia's mother speaks highly of you, too.
Okay. Do you get any flack from the Chinese community?
On the contrary, thank you. Lydia's mother is your classic ethnic mother. And she's always on Lydia's case over something or another. And the question was, do I get flack from the Chinese community? On the contrary, they love Lydia's mother. Or at least the ones I hear from. Now, it may be that there are, you know, millions of Chinese out there who hate me and never say anything. But I once had a young man come up to me at a signing and say, I really just have to ask you one question. When did you meet my mother? But the thing is, an ethnic mother is an ethnic mother. I had one too, you know. She didn't speak Chinese, but she spoke Yiddish. So it's really a very universal expression of love. Yeah.
How do you feel about now books moving to the electronic age and the e-books and changing from holding a book, you know, to reading a book on a computer?
Yeah, you know, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with the Kindle. I don't think the Kindle is quite yet physically the thing. It's great if you're traveling, but as soon as you get home, you want to open an actual book again. You can't put your cup of coffee down on your Kindle. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know, but I have no problem in theory and in principle with the shift to electronic media because I think you know, the same arguments were made about the shift to the printed book from the spoken and sung book when Gutenberg came along. I think it is a change in media, but I don't think it's a change in story. Yeah.
Hi. Several years ago, I heard a talk that was given by a successful mystery writer. And I decided, because I'd never read any of her books, to read them. And I read a couple, and I was really shocked by how flabby her writing was. I think she's probably a good storyteller. She's popular. She's got a following, and that's why she's successful. But I'm wondering if it's really true that editors and agents, they don't really look for particularly good writing. All they care about is the potential for its saleability.
Yeah, well, that is absolutely true. The agents and the editors are in the book sales business. And if they think a book has a possibility of selling big, they will buy it, and they will do everything they can to make it sell. And it's a high concept thing. It's like Hollywood. You know, this book is about, oh man, that is way cool. You know, Dan Brown could have turned in the back of his sardine can, and it would have been published to this big effect, because he's Dan Brown and they know it's going to work. Now, as it happens, he didn't. He turned in an actual book. But the publishing business is not the place where writers have to look for their own quality. You have to look inside yourself, because the publishing business is not going to do that for you, and it's not going to do that for you as readers either. As readers, you have to look to each other.
Yeah. Is there a reason that you use your initials rather than your first name?
There is, because my first name is practically unpronounceable, and my last name is something that everybody always thinks they've heard as a first name. So my first name is Shira, but everybody thinks it's Shira. So I get Shira Rozan. People think that I call up and say, hi, this is Shira Rozan. Secretaries leave messages and people call back and say, can I speak to Rozan, please? I gave it up long since. It just wasn't working. So that's the reason. Yes, sir.
All right. Hi. Thanks for a very interesting talk first.
Thank you.
I'd like to say, sometimes when I read books, I can pick apart what I love about it, and I know that it's a great book. Sometimes I love a great book, but I have no idea why. And it's the same for bad books, And you mentioned that we all know good books from bad books, and a lot of times, for lack of a better word, the literary snobs, they can always tell you, a great book is, it has this, or, they read a great book and it was great because X, Y, Z. So when it comes to genre books, do you think that most of the people who you believe know a good book from a bad book know why it's a good book from a bad book? Or?
No, I don't think so, and I'm not sure I know either. I think that the thing about a book is, and in some ways similar to a movie, there's a lot of synergy. There'll be people who will say, oh my God, the characters in that book were fabulous. The story wasn't, it was kind of boring, but that's all right because the characters were so great. They'll still say that was a good book. It depends. There are so many elements, and it depends on their relationship. I think very few of us know why we necessarily respond to something, and the more you study something, the more you learn about it, and so you can begin to maybe pick apart that stuff. But I think it's such a complicated system, a book, that I don't think people do necessarily know why they're responding to something. Although there are the plot people and the character people and the setting people. There are people who say, oh my God, if it's set in China, I'll read it no matter what. But they're few, and I think that in general, people don't know why they love something. And I think that's kind of okay. It's sort of like not knowing why you love somebody. You can say, well, because he's kind and he's smart, and but you can make a list of other people who are kind and smart and generous and whatever it is. You don't love them. So what it is, I think it's hard to say. Is this my last? Where's my timekeeper? Oh, you're right there. So can I take one more question, or I'm done? One more? Okay, one more.
Okay. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for all the enjoyment I've gotten reading your books.
Thank you.
And I was wondering if you could comment about the challenge of writing the same characters in a series, the kind of thing of, is it Nero Wolfe who never changed?
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, writing the same. It does get to be a problem because they sort of do have to change. And the Nero Wolfe never changed, and the weather never changed, and nobody ever changed. You can't do that anymore. That's really too much of a fantasy world. And so it is a bit of a problem because Lydia and Bill do have to change. They have to age. They don't age nearly as fast as I do. That first book came out in '94, and they are now maybe, I think each of them about a year older, which is nice for them. But it's a challenge, and and changing their relationship is a challenge too, because their relationship is now, growing at the speed of an acorn, becoming a mighty oak. But sooner or later, I'm going to have to do something about that. It is a problem. You want them to become more mature. You want them to bring more and more to the table as more and more things happen to them. But you don't want to lose what started you with them, because in real life, anybody who'd been through what Lydia and Bill have been through in the last 9 books of theirs, would just be sitting home with the whiskey bottle, just in total despair. That doesn't happen to characters, because then there's no more books to write about them. So it is a challenge. On the other side, though, it's a thrill. I did 2 standalones, and I had to get to know all the characters in those books before I could start again. I came back to Lydia's voice, and it was like, oh, I've come home. I know her. I know what she thinks. I know how she feels. I know how to write her book. I wrote a Bill Smith book that I just turned in. Same thing. I know who he is now. And so that's the good news about writing about the same character. All right, they're going to give me the hook in a minute, so thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for staying.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.